So, the Match Group settled with the FTC for $14 million for deceptive practices. $14 million? What do you think about that? Let me break it down. So, deceptive practices, what they're, owning, and this is a small part of what they actually do, but we'll get there. Misleading practices. I've been saying this forever. Having bots send members messages to keep them, wanting to keep their membership alive. That sounds like fraud to me. And under the law, it technically is. And this is what really, really baffles me. And there's a lot about this that baffles me, but it really baffles me because I have first-hand experience with the SEC. Yeah. I was a settlement administrator for a public company, and they did some bad stuff, and I had to settle it, which I did 4 times. Anyway, that's here nor there, but I just want to throw that out there. So I know a little bit about the stock market, and I know a little bit about how the game is played, and this really irks me, because the SEC, any of the 3-letter agencies, none of them are your friends. I'm not gonna lie, none of them are. But the SEC, their rule book is like feet wide. It's huge. They have so many laws and rules and regulations, and it's all in this big ass book. Okay. Well, I dealt with some SEC investigators, and I learned some things. But what they're not talking about, they're talking about deceptive practices, aka fraud. It's the same thing, right? If a company uses deception to get somebody to spend more money or to spend money on their product, that sounds to me like fraud. And there are little laws in the SEC. They have the little laws because it's a public company, so they're governed differently than a private company. In case you didn't know that, I'm sure you do. But anyway, the SEC is the one that oversees, the regulation of these public companies, and how they're ran, what they have to do, what they have to provide, what they have to not do. And one of them is fraud, allegedly. But a lot of them do it, and they get away with it. And the Match Group got away with it, in my opinion. $14 million settlement. That sounds like a lot of money, right? Maybe. For a company that its IPO valuation was $4 billion? Based on what? How do you give a company that's not really a company, it's just an app, a $4 billion valuation? That sounds to me deceptive, doesn't it? So it sounds to me like they took advantage of their shareholders, or they lied to their shareholders about some stuff, right? Because why else would they get a valuation of $4 billion? Think about that. So anyway, they're going to pay $14 million to the FTC. So they are going to pay less than 0.5% of their revenue, 0.5%, for ripping people off. Should we be happy about this? Don't get me wrong. I see the positivity. I see the fact that people are starting to pay attention to what these apps are doing, and what these companies. And Match, by the way, they own Match.com, they own Tinder, they own Plenty of Fish, and a couple other little ones. Yeah, a little monopoly going on there. Could that be why they got the $4 billion, valuation? I don't know, maybe, probably. You know, how come the FTC is going after them, but the SEC isn't? And I did my time with the SEC because the company that I worked for, or worked with, I didn't really work for them. I was, I worked for myself, but I was their settlement administrator, and I went through hell to settle their bad behavior with these people. They took their money, and these were not savvy investors that lost their money either. A savvy investor, they're used to losing. They win, they lose, they take it all in stride. They did get a little pissy, but these people were not savvy investors. So they like literally lost their life savings. And there was a big investigation on it, whatever. I came in after the fact. I came in to settle it. I wasn't involved in all that. But here's the thing. If you are deceiving people willfully and knowingly, and they had all kinds of little tricks that they were playing on people, that's fraud. And not only are you defrauding people, but you are defrauding the people that invested in your company, the stock market, your shareholders. And you're going to pay $14 million to the FTC and wash your hands of it? I don't know. I have a big problem. They have rules 10B-5 about basically defrauding people in the course of trying to either sell or buy securities. Well, if you are, using deceptive practice and you are a public company, that is fraud and deceiving people with securities because it's a public company. So the shareholders were being defrauded. But they're not going after them for that. But that's exactly what the law is. I think it's 10-5, 10B-5. I think that's what it is. But, how is this okay? And, I mean, like I said, don't get me wrong. I'm thrilled that people are starting to catch on to these dirty little bastards that are, just ripping people off. And they're having, they're creating bots that go and message these people who are members of these platforms to make them believe that somebody's really interested in them. I mean, how freaking cruel do you have to be? And I'm wondering why the SEC isn't all over this. I don't know. What do you think? I just don't understand why. I mean, I understand it's all like, I know how the game was played. I was part of that game, and I watched, and I paid attention to what people did and what people were willing to do, and it just made me sick. And I'm like, I'm going to try to do what's right and try to sell it for these people, but how come they're getting away with such a small, tiny settlement when they've made billions of dollars off of unsuspecting people and preyed on their vulnerabilities? I just don't think that's right. I mean, I think that, they should be paying, well, I think all of their revenue should be paid back. I do. But I'm against apps and companies that are just apps from being publicly traded. I don't think that they should be allowed to be publicly traded. That's just me. Because they're not really tangible. I mean, so they're an app, and how do you come out of the starting gate with a $4 billion valuation? I have a big problem with that. But I have a big problem across the board with these dating apps because I think that they're all, I won't say scam artists, but you can use whatever word you want. But that, yeah, I'm not a fan. And I've spoken about this a lot. But my thing is, if you are having to go to those links to get people to buy whatever it is that you're selling, you're doing something wrong. And you should be punished. And $14 million is kind of a joke for a company that makes, $3.5 billion a year. I don't know. This doesn't seem right. But a lot of things in this life aren't right. But I hope you are paying attention to this and you are distancing yourself from these apps because they are not acting in your best interest. Like they claim they are, and that's part of the deception with the Match group. And they are the biggest. They're Match.com, Plenty of Fish, Tinder. Yeah. It's like a little monopoly. It's cute. Anyway, good luck.